Hello everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well in some sort of way and that you're all having a great day. Gonna be a bit of a different video. I'm noticing the energy has shifted quite a bit within the cryptocurrency space. The last time we had one of these discussions, I believe it was about maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. What ends up happening is that if there's a relative period of optimism within the cryptocurrency space, within markets, people in crypto tend to react positively, logically. When there happens to be a downturn, when things slow down or aren't as amazing as people expected from whatever given moment, the energy in the room shifts quite quickly, especially within the cryptocurrency space, because we are in such a weird and volatile market. The other issue is that cryptocurrency news that pops up usually tends to, and I say this nicely, usually tends to get everything wrong. So remember how a couple of years ago, the last time we had one of these discussions, people were writing, well, Ethereum's going down, so Bitcoin has to go down. Well, this is happening, and therefore Tron can't do this. Polygon isn't doing that, and therefore Cardano. And I was reading the articles, and I was like, what are you talking about? The problem was all the nonsense that we went through in 2020, 2021, and the majority of 2022. The economy's real, and we are also part of those economies. As many people may or may not have realized, we are tightly interwoven into the world's economy now. There is no us and them. It's simply us only together. And this, I told you, would happen as we got news of institutions getting into the space. In 2020 and 2021, it just happened, I think, a lot quicker than everyone thought that it would. So we are constantly and will probably forever be at the behest of world markets and how they move. There's no real escaping it right now. The cryptocurrency space was meant to be its own whale, jaguar. I'm thinking of some kind of an animal that existed on its own outside of the market. But the moment you commingle with Fidelity and BlackRock, of course, it's going to happen this way. So this video is basically going to be about why Bitcoin isn't moving up as quick as people would like it to, why Ethereum is acting weird, why altcoins have not yet, at the time of me making this video, why they have not yet entered altcoin season, and why we are not currently at a $100,000 Bitcoin. There's a lot going on. And I mentioned this all to you before in tons of other videos. I try to myself stay away from world news simply because I find it extremely depressing right now. That's me personally. I don't know how everyone else is handling it, but my mind can only take so much. The way that I do actually get my news is usually from my friends. When crazy things are happening, of course, people push it in your direction on some website, on some platform, on some social media thing. And this is the way that I usually end up staying informed. So even just clicking around for a couple of minutes, it was all the things that I knew that were going on. And the problem is I'm sure that there's a lot more. So for those of you who do not know, and if you have managed to avoid this, you're a superstar. We are currently in the midst of one of the most confusing and scary and ridiculous and odd economic times that we have ever seen, as this is the only time in history where there's been 8 billion people on this planet, and the amount of people who believe that we are on the cusp of something potentially not good, economic or otherwise, is quite high. As we are tied to other markets and we are the word's not experiment, what's the word? We're a brand new market. And If other markets that are more established and stabilized have a very difficult time right now, of course, it's also going to happen to us. This is what we also saw a number of years ago where crypto prices began to fall and people were like, what's going on? It's because it looked like the world was collapsing. So if people are taking their money out of stocks and bonds and mutual funds and selling their homes to get emergency cash, of course, they're going to do the same for crypto. The illusion currently is when you look at CNBC or NBC or Fox Business or wherever you get your money news, is they're reporting that stocks are doing great. When you look at the stocks, it's around like 7 different companies. They will keep reporting on the things that are great and wonderful and awesome and amazing to give you the perception that everything in your life is also going swimmingly amazing, awesome, what have you. The majority, this is also an article about people in the States, but everywhere, everyone's kind of expecting something, and we don't know what. We've also been hearing constantly, as I went over in a number of other videos here and on the other channel, the rumblings of a recession, depression. Now, I told you years ago, the issue was that a lot of the same interesting people who've been shouting this out loud have been shouting this out since 2011. The issue is that it's probably going to have to happen at some point, and the other issue is that we are already not doing good. So, coupling the idea of us already not being in a great economic position as people, government's not doing well, economy's not doing well, and things are looking very shaky as the only remedy that we've had thus far to fix any of this has been printing money. The problem is, you're going to hear that phrase a lot in this video, is that when you print too much of something, you devalue it. So when we saw in 2020 the need by multiple governments to print extra money, which they literally used to try to keep stock markets afloat. Remember in the States when everyone got that $800 check and that $1,200 check? You should have probably realistically received around $15,000. The issue is that the extra 13 that they didn't give you was used to push into stocks and to push into markets to keep things afloat because they knew that everything would have collapsed otherwise. And I think really even in hindsight, they probably should have, so we can have a totally different economic system that isn't as ridiculous as the current one that we are going through. I watch a lot of documentaries. I watch a lot of news reports. I watch a lot of, 15-minute videos that end up popping up, not by specific YouTubers, but like actual news stories. So they're not like always like an hour and a half, what have you. So how I'm able to absorb so much. And people are, for lack of a better term, broke. Like brokety broke. This is why I've been saying for a long time, and I will keep repeating, only, O-N-L-Y, in case you can't spell it, only put money into crypto that you can afford to lose, that you are okay with losing. Pay your bills, pay off your debts, pay your light, pay your electricity, feed yourself, have food in the fridge, and then in any extra leftover money, you use that for the cryptocurrency market. It's not just because things aren't looking too hot around the world right now. It's just a general piece of knowledge. This is how all investing actually is. You're not seeing people being like, oh, had a piece of bread earlier, at least I got some Tesla stock. No, you need to take care of yourself and the things that you have to do. This is going to be such a different video. A lot of the stuff that I've been watching, there's one video, I'm pretty sure you can find it on YouTube. It's something along the lines of young people in South Korea are foregoing X, Y, and Z because they want to buy luxury goods. There are videos like this in the US, there's videos like this in Europe, Australia, what have you. And it's usually done to kind of shame them, where it's like, these young people, of course they don't own a home because they're buying Louis Vuitton and other things like that. And it's like, well, no, because it's not the 1970s and homes aren't $18,000 anymore. If you've ever looked at stuff for in Australia, where they have studio apartments and 1 bedrooms and homes that are actually dilapidated and they start at $1 million. No normal person can do that. So, of course, in essence, all hope is kind of lost. But the issue ends up being is that we are bombarded all the time when you walk down the street with posters and things that are lighting up that are telling you to buy stuff to be happy. So when everyone's unhappy, what do you think that they're going to do? This is all by design. This is part of the issue and the trap, rat trap, mouse trap that you're probably all trying to get of right now, because you understand exactly how bad that it is. It's why sometimes I say, like, you don't need that 19th pair of shoes. It's all just nonsense. And when you hear that these companies are posting, record profits, I wonder how they're doing it. They're making sure the only way that not even rich, that the wealthy remain wealthy is by telling you that you can also become wealthy and happy by buying stuff. It's literally what it is. You can only be happy if you have something new and shiny. When you're not walking down the street, you look up and you see the ads of people holding bags and smiling and laughing and embracing each other. Look how happy they are. It's all psychological, and it's all something that we've been taught. The only way to be happy is to buy. The problem is that if you buy too much, you don't have anything in savings. And this only adds to the economic pressure from everything that we're currently seeing right now. I'm telling you, this is going to be in history books, because everything that's happening is, I don't want to use the word calculated, but it's all been set up like this to be this way on purpose. There's a reason how the people at the top stay at the top. It's by making sure that there are other people beneath them. That's how you climb up a pyramid. The mega news, for those of you who have been missing it, is the idea of inflation. We consistently have been hearing, once again, keeping all of this in mind, when you're wondering why the world is in the shape that it's in, why the crypto market isn't surging. I mean, first of all, there's always a down period after the halving. This isn't anything new. But I think we have a lot of new people in the market, who are kind of confused why it didn't happen the day after. Understand that this also takes effect as well because of everything that's also dragging us down. While the idea of inflation might not hamper your life or your life choices, for the vast majority of other people, it is something that is absolutely egregious that's currently happening right now. Whenever we hear that inflation is 3% or 4% or 2.7%, those aren't the actual inflation numbers. It's simply because inflation is the cost of everything that has risen by a certain percentage. What we hear in the news, and even more so, it's also tons of other factors besides that. What you will continuously hear in the news, as it even says on the screen, is that inflation is around 4%, 4.8%. The problem is that they're not factoring things that you actually do over the course of your life. They're not factoring the reason why your rent keeps going up by 22, 24, 38% year on year. When they do the consumer price index, they're factoring in a literal basket of goods that they say are in the supermarket. And then they go, well, that's how much inflation has risen. But they're not actually going off of the fact. Have you seen those videos of people in Canada where they're showing like a literal head of lettuce that used to be $1.49 and now it's $7.99? Where people are making these videos on TikTok and on Instagram, and they're literally showing videos from 2 years ago when they were in the supermarket, and they were like, this used to be 99 cents. The box is smaller and it's currently $5.29. The inflation rate is not 4%. It is probably, if we can be completely realistic, if you factor everything in, it's probably 70 to 80% even for the US dollar. The problem is as the world reserve currency, as the people who, control all the monies around the world, you cannot say that number out loud because it would send people into a panic. People are already panicked at the prospect of 4%, and then they see that their grocery bill has tripled. Housing has become more expensive. Energy, water, everything. So we are currently, for those of you not looking at the screen, it says the super core inflation measure shows Fed may have a real problem on their hands. Yes, it's not as simple and cut and dry as simply going, well, let's just lower inflation. The markets around the world have become used to governments printing money. They literally need it to stay afloat. This is why you were only given $1,200 and $800 over the course of a 2-year period, because the rest of the money that was printed needed, and I say needed from the, economic standpoint, for them not to collapse. Think of how fragile the entire system is if you need to print money because there's money coming from nowhere else. This expands upon the idea of interest rates. The reason why all these rich people want interest rates to go lower is so that essentially you and your friends start taking out debt again. If you're not taking out debt when interest rates are 7, 8, 9%, you're probably more likely to do it when they're around 4 or 5%. You'll start seeing news stories telling you now's a great time to get into the market. It's because they want you to be in debt. When you are in debt, you are typically in debt for a number of years. If you are buying a home, it's 30-something years. That money gets paid to the bank continuously, and it's a drip for them. If you have a slow drip that's going into a bucket, now imagine you have 129 million buckets all dripping at the exact same time. This feeds the beast that is the bank, and it does it continuously. If the economy is slowing down and you're being told you might lose your job, you might lose your flat, you might lose your X, Y, and Z, you go into savings mode. Why do you think there are constantly things saying, hey, we should be out there spending again, we got to spend to help the economy? It's because you are not meant to have money. This is how the system works. It's the only way to keep the current system that we have afloat is for there to be people literally under the pyramid who are struggling economically. So the other way that this ends up being messed up is by the cost of things constantly rising, not only because of taxes, but also because of land taxes. Things become more expensive, and that cost, of course, also gets passed on to the consumer and then also to the renter. So you have multiple things that you have to worry about. And then the problem also is that inflation is not 4.8%. It's a lot higher. Even in the middle, it says the gauge measures services inflation, excluding food, energy, and housing, and has been roaring higher lately, up 4.8% year over year in March, and is up more than 8% at a 3-month annualized pace. They cannot get this under control because they have only 2 options. You either stop printing money and you make the US dollar a lot stronger, but then you also cause markets to collapse because there's no new money flowing into it. Or you turn the money printer back on and you continue giving these services and this money to all these companies and these institutions. They need you to start taking out debt once again. Haven't you noticed that there's a really weird trend in the last 3 years with all these buy now, pay later, or buy now and like pay in small amounts? Who do you think own these companies? These are not mom and pop shops. These are also owned in part by the bank and banks to get you to continue buying. If they can't get you on a 30-year mortgage, they can get you on a 2-year purchase. And then you go, they're only taking out $15 per month. Well, I would normally be spending around $200, so they keep getting you over and over because you buy more and more. I just felt someone clutch their pearls. That's how they get you. And this is part of the problem. So while people are trying to go into saving mode, they can't because everything continuously keeps getting more expensive. The other problem that we also have now is the idea of stagflation, things stagnating. And one of the other major issues that this ties into is the idea of deflation. I'm going to say this, and please understand my words. Deflation is not bad. Deflation is great for the consumer, but bad for the government. You are supposed to, as a government, show year on year that you have printed more money, you have made more value, you've pushed more into your stock markets, and they have risen. You have produced more goods, and you usually want to export more than you import to show how strong that your economy actually is. When all of these things begin to stagnate, or the numbers are lower than they were before, the idea of deflation then comes into mind, and you will hear and you will read and you will see that the idea of deflation is terrible for the government, is terrible for the bank, but they never, ever, ever mention that it's great for you because it means that prices go down across the board. So the issue is, and I mean this is the most first world issue in the entire universe, that home that you own that is worth 1.3 million, the following year will maybe be worth 1.1 million. So the value of it has gone down, but also have the cost of things inside of supermarkets. This is an issue for governments, not for the actual consumer. So the problem is that if you don't print more, if you don't keep up with like literal inflation by printing more to essentially devalue your currency every year, the value or price of things in stores go down. And it sounds wonderful. It's because it's not a terrible prospect. The other side of it ends up being is that because markets are used to the idea of inflation and prices going up and money being printed, this also scares market and the people begin to move their money out of the markets. And then prices end up going up because companies are used to prices going up. Sounds confusing? It's because it's slightly meant to be. If there's a box of cereal for $4.99 that you saw years ago used to be $2.29, and you also see that it's a lot smaller, it's because the company knows that as more money and more debt is being printed, they can essentially charge you more and more every single year and blame it on actual inflation. The company then gets to say, look how much extra money we've made from the year before. Golf clap, extra profits. If we all know that the value of things should have gone down and it benefits, and I dare say the masses in this situation, the company cannot then post to their shareholders that they made a profit. They would have lost money and they would continue trying to push the extra costs from their losses onto you. So the boxes would get even smaller when they go, well, we have to do it because of deflation. It's because they're finding a clever way to be able to lie to all of you and say that, well, you know, prices went down, so we had to also make our boxes smaller as well. These companies are posting $117 billion worth of profits for a reason. Think of what the word profits means. They paid 17 cents for something, and they're charging you $4.99. That is a huge margin of profit. Stagnation is all over the place right now. Fears about stagnation are mounting in the US. It's every central banker's worst nightmare because it's supposed to, after 1971, basically not happen. They're supposed to have a system where they print and create more every single year so that you are forced to pay more and buy more, so that you essentially can't afford anything. There's a reason why all of these things are happening right now. Remember, I told you before, all the corporate landlords, why do you think they're buying all the property right now? He who owns the property controls the rent. If you get a chance, you can find a video on it as well. And there's something, I think it said by was it 2040 or 2050? I don't remember. And they were saying that they're expecting by 2030 or 2040, I think it's going to be like 60% of all homes within the United States will be owned by corporate entities. And I was watching it with a friend and they were like, oh, that's not, I mean, you know, it's terrible, but it's not that bad. It's only 60%. And I was like, keeping in mind that the other 40% are owned by normal people who own their homes. This means that there's no supply left and they can continue raising the prices essentially forever. The system is rigged. It's been rigged for a while and it's only going to get riggier. Especially as things, I don't want to say begin to collapse, but as things don't do as well as they did in the 1970s and the 1980s. A lot of countries, their currencies are not doing well and have not been doing well for a number of years. One of the main prospects that we've been seeing, and it's always touted as a positive, when in actuality, it's absolutely terrible for people living within that country. Do you remember the videos that we were talking about? This was 2 years ago, not even about Argentina, not even about all these other countries whose currencies are completely collapsing. One of the main things right now, or back then, was about Turkey, because they have terrible economic policies and they're probably not going to change for a long time. I think their current interest rate, I believe, is 50%. I think that's what it is. And the idea is that they're trying to discourage people from doing X, Y, and Z, but that's not how you get anything under control. So their economy completely collapsed, as did their currency. The positive side that you saw on the news was that all these people were going to Turkey. They were going to 5-star resorts. They were paying $210 for 2 weeks, and they're like, yeah, this is amazing. What you didn't see is that the millions of people who live under these economic policies can no longer afford tomatoes. There were some people, there was a guy they were talking to. He didn't even live in a fancy area. I think his rent was the equivalent of $250 per month for his studio apartment. And they were saying that after a year, because inflation had gone up so high and the currency had devalued so much, the owner was like, I need to now charge you $1,600. And he's like, $1,600 what? He's like, I don't have that money. I was barely able to pay it before with the job that I currently have. The bright side is all these rich people get to travel around the world and go live their best fantasies. This is also what's happening in Japan right now. If you look at the news, if you look at YouTubers, it's always spun as, well, it's bad for them, but it's great for us. Like, we can go boost the economy. And it's like, no, it's also the exact opposite. So Japan's currency, along with about 15 other countries, has been dropping. It posted one day that it did well against the US dollar, but it's still struggling. And it's the idea that the government had to change their economic policies that I believe they had not changed in 10 to 15 years. Because of the actual threat of deflation, along with like their currency also continuously being devalued as it's being sold by other companies and institutions on digital foreign exchange markets who are also selling the yen for the US dollar, which is also a huge portion of manipulation to try and keep the US dollar afloat as inflation continues to rise. Right. I hope you're all still with me and keeping this all in your mind as we go over the exact reasons why the cryptocurrency exchange market isn't ripping and roaring right now. People are literally terrified because no one knows what to do. People historically look towards the Fed. They look towards the United States. They look towards the people who are printing the US dollar, and they go, you know what to do. Now, what happens when the world reserve currency doesn't know what to do? What happens to every other currency who have already been collapsing? A lot of people think that the collapses in other world government currencies began around 2020, and it's like, no, they've been happening for a very long time. This is also one of the issues with exclusively paying attention to what's happening within the US. It's like, no, everything else is being dragged down at the same time. However, we're always constantly told to always look in one direction. For those of you not looking at the screen, it says, this was from the World Economic Forum's president. He said, we haven't seen this kind of debt since the Napoleonic. Pretty sure I can't also say that word. The debt levels around the world are tremendous. Gigantimous, and they're only getting worse, and they will continue to get worse because the world runs on debt. That's the point of the system that we currently have right now. It should run actually quite different, but when you allow for, and excuse my language, when you allow for a free market, the market runs free. When you allow the system to go from, well, let's back this by something so no one has to get into debt. Or if you do get into debt, just a little bit, maybe a year or two of debt, and you change the system to go, well, we can get money from people forever. Let's tell them to go to school. Let's make sure that it's completely unaffordable and that people have to pay this back forever. One of my friends, I must have told you this story. This was around January. I must have told you this story. I don't think she's listening, but hello if you are. She was telling me that she's been paying off her student loan debt since she was, I think, 21 or 22, because apparently the moment she was done, she got home, there was a letter waiting for her that was like, hey, time to pay up. She said she's been paying every single month, constantly, every single month. And she was really optimistic about it because she was like, I'm paying down all this debt. She was counting the numbers and stuff like that. And then, it's going down. I should almost be done because I believe she's mid-30s now. Mid-30s. When I spoke to her and she told me, she was very angry, as one would be. She told me that she found out that she was only paying down the principal amount, I believe it was. So if you owe $150,000, you pay $500 every month, that is being, whacked away at, if you would. The problem is that there's interest on top of it. And no one informed her, along with many other people, this is a very common thing, that they also have to pay off the interest amount on it as well, which also isn't a thing in many other countries. There's no interest on when you try to get an education, just throwing that out there. So little did she know, the money that she had to pay back has actually nearly doubled, because every month that she wasn't paying off the interest, the number kept on getting higher and higher, and she feels stuck. But it's also by design. Why would you allow someone who's just out of high school to take out a loan at all with no number on it? I'm not going to say 50,000. I won't say 100K at all. Why are you allowing this? It's because she's been paying all this money for a good 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 20 something years. Now, how much longer is she going to have to continue paying that off? As her rent is rising, everything else she has to pay for every single month, her car, water, gas, electric. The point is, you are meant to be in the nicest way, in shackles forever. The problem is that the debt levels have gotten so high, no one can deal with it anymore. Normal person or government. We are in oh my gosh, like the world is so insane right now. For those of you not looking at the screen, this is the national debt clock just for the United States. And that's just the debt of the actual country. This isn't personal debt. So that's 100,000 million, billion, trillion. It is currently at 34 trillion, 34.5 trillion US dollars. It says that's $102,741 for every single person in America. This is the debt that essentially every person would have to pay to the government to be able to make the national debt up. I forgot what the numbers are. I think the US debt goes up by $1 trillion every couple of months or something like that. And this is before they turn the money printer back on. Do you understand that? This is before interest rates have lowered and they start printing even more money than they currently are right now. Right. So, yeah, household debt is also on the rise, as is credit card debt, which is currently over $1 trillion within the US. So you have personal debt, you have credit card debt, you have usually housing debt, you also have educational debt as well. Keeping in mind, this is for the most part a discussion about economic situations within the United States, but also this ripple goes across the entire planet, as you have now seen in other countries. They're basically following suit for what the US has been doing. Couple all of these things together and understand why normal people, A, don't have money and B, don't have enough money to invest and are trying to save. And why the powers that be are constantly trying to convince us that things are okay, things are just fine, go out there and start spending more money. You can't afford your rent? Well, get a better job. You know how many people who I know as well personally, and even on these little news things that I watch, they talk to these people who went to university sometimes for like 6-7 years. They went to normal uni for 4 years, and then they tried to get their master's, or they got something else or some other degree on top of it. And they're like, I've sent in 800 CVs, 800 resumes. I can't find anything. They were talking to this guy. He started working at a fast food chain because he was like, it's all that I could find, and I'm over $200,000 in debt just for school alone. I know. It's actually crazy to think about, because my mind consistently, this is personally, my mind expands all the time. And I think this is not even the middle of 2024. What's the situation in 2028? This is, not to change topics slightly, but this is literally the reason why we have Bitcoin. And why you see so many people like optimistic about Bitcoin, or why you see people who are insane inflation levels around the world. We keep hearing them like buying Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin, you essentially cannot print more of. You can mine it, but there's only a certain amount that there will ever actually be. One of the core principles for Bitcoin is also deflation. As the halving continues to happen, it becomes more and more deflationary. This is why Bitcoin continues rising in value against other assets. Remember, we've been talking once again, the $1 million listing thing, or anything else for that matter. That home lost 99% of its value compared to Bitcoin, because as Bitcoin rises in value, as more money is printed and inflation continues going insane, the cost of other things comparative to Bitcoin goes down. So if you're holding Bitcoin, everything else essentially does become cheaper. Always look more into it. Always keep digging. Always try to find more information. Always try to get more data. Always try to learn more. There's a reason why there's so many people like when they talk about that this could be the thing that actually helps billions of people around the world. It's that. What happens if Bitcoin's price in the next year and a half 5x's or 6x's and everything else doesn't, or goes up in price in the store by 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. You have not only outpaced inflation, but your purchasing power with Bitcoin has made you richer comparative to every other asset. There's a reason why we have Bitcoin. Also in the newses, for those of you who also have not been paying attention, on top of the States not doing well, Europe not terrible, but it could, of course, be better. China is heavily in the news right now. It says China consumer prices plunge at fastest rate for 15 years as deflation fears deepen. China's economy has not been doing well for a while. It was the great hope over the course of the last 30 years until we realized that something was amiss. All the homes that they were building were not being purchased. The people who were getting these prepayments from these homes that they were building and subsidies from the government were actually using that money to build other housing establishments that also weren't being lived in and no one was buying, or some people were buying, but the whole building was never actually finished. And this kept on going on and on and on. And this is why we had that entire Evergrande thing where their housing market began to completely collapse. And part of the problem is that when one major economy collapsed, they're all interwoven and they all begin to collapse together. One of the main issues within China specifically is that money that's in there can probably never leave. We went over that before. This was a major thing a couple of years ago, a decade, if not, no, more than a decade ago, where people were becoming quite rich within the country, and they realized that they wanted to take their money out of the country because of whatever reason was going through their head. And then what ended up happening is the government found out that people were trying to move capital, so they lowered the amount of money that one person could move in a year, and it kept on lowering. It was whatever it was before, and then it went to 100K, then it went to 50K. And this is why if you read from a lot of major companies who have set up shop in China, they've all said at one point before, our capital is there. We cannot move it out, basically ever. So you are kind of forced to loop this money over and over and over into this country. But what happens when the country's not doing well? Right, you can't get your money out because that's the way that the system has been created. It says China's real estate crisis has not touched bottom. It's only getting worse, and this is only worsened by the fact of a number of terrible economic policies of people trying to devalue their currencies to make sure that they get a bunch of people basically buying from them, because you're more inclined to buy something if it costs 77 cents as opposed to costing an entire dollar. But the issue is, what if no one even wants it at 77 cents and you have to continue to devalue it, and everyone around the world is doing well? Well, guess where you end up? Precisely. So on top of that, we have a situation where, and I'm certain you've heard about it in the news. Why aren't people buying homes? More people should be buying homes. It's because they're used to this flow. They're used to the idea of you needing and wanting to get in debt to try and sell you the idea of the American dream, which also isn't a thing. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that. I remember that from when I was a kid. Someone told me, they were like, there is no American dream. The American dream is the American dream. We've been told, and it's so weird to see these like news articles and documentaries of these people crying, I just want the American dream. And it's like, no. You don't understand what it is. Someone made up something and told you all that this is what you have to aspire to. And when you don't do it, of course, like, it drives you absolutely insane. So you're far more inclined to believe that you are less than or don't have enough because you don't have the same exact thing as the person across the street who's also struggling. Don't know if you know that. So you go, I have to get a home. I have to get a house. I have to do these things. I have to be in debt. Over and over and over. It's a continuous circle. Do you understand how messed up the world is right now? Like, how absolutely egregious. We have not even, because of the algorithm, for those of you who don't know, and I think a lot of people actually don't. I've spoken with people before, and they're like, what? Yeah, for those of you who don't know, algorithms basically run everything. You probably have noticed this if you're on some kind of social media. But it also does the same exact thing on YouTube. So there are things I literally cannot say because the algorithm and the AI will hear it. So we haven't even touched on, and we cannot touch on, the other major world events that are happening right now. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, this also induces an enormous amount of fear into the markets. An enormous amount of fear into the markets because of the hyper uncertainty of what's happening right now. Now take those two gigantic events and put that right on top of everything else that we've been talking about. And there are multiple ways to actually get this under control. But the problem is that people stop being paid, and the people at the top want to continuously be paid. So you can't stop the machine. It's something that we also talked about in 2020. If the system had been made or allowed to, literally fall to the ground, light hum, not the roaring of the machine anymore. If governments, all the money that they had printed had gone to you to make sure that you were okay for a number of years as they fixed the system and built it all back up. But that's not how it works. They break stuff. And then they go, okay, cool, we fixed it. You look at it, and it's a gigantic machine with 4 Band-Aids on it. You're like, that doesn't look fixed. It's fixed. We're just going to go print some more money. And at some point, it has to break. It cannot go on like this. It literally cannot. I don't know if you've noticed that. I always say 5 years. Think about the time frames in 5 years, even forwards and backwards. Think of where you were 5 years ago. Think of where you were 5 years before that. Think of where the world is right now. 5 more years, something has to snap. This is why you see all these advocates for Bitcoin as well. Because we've seen around the world, we've seen the trend of economies falling apart and collapsing. But we've also seen the trend of more people moving into Bitcoin because it does indeed hold some form of safety comparative to other currencies. We've seen that Bitcoin continuously goes up mathematically because of halvings and because of demand comparative to other currencies and countries. It's just a thing that we've been seeing over and over and over. Why do you think there's such a huge amount of capital control within China, and why they told people or have been discouraging them from getting into the market? What happens when you as a country print all the money and you have all the power, and then people stop, I don't want to use the term needing you, but they figure out that they can do just fine with another currency that they can also mine, that they can also use on their own free will? What takes place? There's a shift in power. But how do you make sure that the power doesn't shift? You buy up all the real estate. You buy up all the assets. You buy up everything. You discourage people and go on the news and say, well, Bitcoin's rat poison squared. It's absolutely terrible. Who's buying it? Why would anyone want Bitcoin? It's absolutely horrible. And they tell you this when Bitcoin's at $15. They'll tell you it when Bitcoin's at $70,000. Why is there such a huge focus all the time to get people out of the Bitcoin market? Bitcoin fell by 4%. That's it. Pack it up, guys. Time to buy gold. I'm certain you've been seeing those articles as well, that Costco's selling gold and how it's such a great time. If you get a chance, here's the kicker. For those of you who don't know, Costco has been selling gold recently, and it's become like one of the biggest things in the news. The problem is that the people who are buying that gold are resellers. They're trying to make a profit from the profit that Costco already made from the gold that was dumped onto Costco. And the issue is that the gold that these companies have been buying from Costco, they also aren't selling it. They can't offload it onto anyone because nobody wants it. Weird, right? Weird, all this stuff that's been happening in the last couple of, I guess, forever. Yeah. Misguided plans to escape economic stagnation have not been working because essentially the people that control everything want things to remain the same. One of the weirdest things that I found out about the world and about life in general is the, I guess, incessant levels of greed that actually take hold. Now I want you to really think for a moment, and give me your honest answer. Honest answer. How much money is enough for you? I know someone always says, it's never enough. I've heard all of it before. I want everything. Imagine for a moment, I gave you $15 million. Is that enough for you to live comfortably? Comfortably. Let's say I gave you $80 million. You think you can live good for the rest of your life? I mean, mathematically, I know you can. $10 million in the stock market alone is getting you $400,000 per month in dividends. I know you can live just fine off of that. What happens when you make sure that you have $16 billion? Where's that money coming from? What's the literal cost of that $16 billion on normal people and on the actual economy? What happens when that number skyrockets to $200 billion? What happens when you know a way to make sure that the economic tension that people have around the world could be gone by October, and you still make sure that you do everything in your power to remain in the seat where you currently are, as opposed to actually fixing things? When you keep making sure that the system remains terrible, it's going to remain terrible. The problem is that things age, and as that age continues on, it gets worse. It starts rotting, it starts rusting over and over and over. The people who run everything, they know exactly what they're doing. That's the problem. They may present themselves sometimes as imbeciles or what have you in the news. They understand the way to keep themselves rich and at the very top. To make sure that you get 1,200 and you're told, but you're not happy with that, as opposed to the 15,000+ that you should have gotten. And even hear me out here, even 15,000 wouldn't have even covered everything over the course of 2020. So if you've been trying to figure out why you keep hearing that stocks are doing well, and it's not all stocks, you can look it up. It's a fraction. It's the same exact thing during 2020. Remember? And we were all told, well, the stock market's doing just great. And it was just the FANG companies who were doing great, and tech companies and anyone who was selling stuff to us while we were at home. The illusion is always that things are bad, but they're not that bad. Stop complaining. Just take out more debt. Because in about 6-7 years, if the world's economy has reversed and it's ripping and roaring all over again, the old incentives will still remain. Why aren't you buying more? Aren't you unhappy? Make sure that you get into debt. Come on, keep doing it over and over and over and over until the system breaks, like in 2008 and 2009. And then we're told that we have to foot the bill for it over and over again. Well, I mean, you guys were buying too much. You guys were the one taking out those triple D loans. They're just, the loans. You didn't understand that the loans you were taking out were terrible. Well, I'm so sorry. And then we have people sitting on TV. Well, I'm really sorry that we did it. I don't know. And then no one gets in trouble and they keep printing more and more money again. This wasn't meant to be a system is broken video, but that's basically where we currently are. So economies around the world are not doing well. The US dollar inflation rate is not 4%. No one knows how to get any of this under control, and there's probably not going to be any answers for the foreseeable future. They know what they need to do to actually get things back under control, but where's the economic incentive in that for the richest people out there? Yeah. So I don't have it here. Rather, I mean, it's kind of redundant at this point. A lot of the cryptocurrency news quite lately has either revolved around Bitcoin's price going down, Ethereum's price going down, the idea of an Ethereum ETF. But as far as from analysts, they're all still pretty optimistic. Nothing has shaken my understanding of the market. I still know where things are going to go, but I know the questions have been rising quite recently, especially after the halving for a lot of people. Yeah. So, yeah, I thought we needed to definitely have this talk because I understand the situation that we're currently going through. And righty, yeah. I have no idea what else to say. So yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed the video. I hope you're all doing well. As I've said before many other times, please take time out for yourself. I know it sounds cheesy. I know it sounds corny. I don't care what word you use there. Take a day off if you can. And I mean, as far as if you are, there are people who work every single day. Go home and take a bath. Watch a movie you haven't seen in a long time. Do something nice for yourself. Life has been a lot the last couple of years, and life in general has been a lot. Make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you take care of yourself mentally. Call a friend, speak to, I mean, there's so much going on. You have to have some bit of a downtime. I know a lot of people are obsessed with the market. I had a couple of friends, they were looking at prices 18 times a day. We're having lunch and they're sitting there looking at prices, and I'm like, put your phone away. It's so much for the mind. Yeah, hopefully things pick up soon. Do not, if you can avoid it, do not get yourself into debt. Try to find some other way, find another path. It's not something that you want. Yeah, right. That's going to do it for this video. I do hope you all in some way are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever the heck you might be. I sincerely hope that it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See